Hi everyone, welcome to the Agile HR Community's Meetup. Warm welcome to the call. This is one of the Agile HR Operating Model Meetup series. We're going to have 4 of them during the fall and trying to get some very cool guests also to the 2021 springtime, so that we can start learning about Agile. Yes, everybody are talking about Agile, but how do HR teams really build that Agile operating model? How do they start working in Agile teams? How do they apply agility into their operations? And today we've got the amazing Antonie as a guest to talk about how Avaloq has done that. Antonie has been part of the Agile HR Certified Practitioner program, and when she returned her assessment, I was looking into that and said, this is amazing. I want everybody to hear about this. So here we are. Antonie is sharing what they have been doing at Avaloq. So let's kick off the meetup and welcome everyone. So my name is Rina Hellström. I'm a founder of the Agile HR Community, also a lead trainer and an Agile enterprise coach, working a lot with bigger transformations and executive level consulting and advisory in Agile development. And with us, we have the amazing Antonie Zumkeller, and I'll give you the word to introduce yourself.
Thanks a lot, Rina, for your kind introduction and also the opportunity to share my experiences here. As Rina said, I'm Antonie Zumkeller and I'm the Global Head of HR Learning and Development at Avaloq. And together with my team, we are actually creating learning experiences that matter with a focus on soft skill and management development. I joined Avaloq in January 2018 as the strategic assistant to our CHRO. I moved to learning and development 1 year later. And as of August 2019, I'm heading the L&D team now. And before I joined Avaloq, I completed my master's in international business and intercultural management in Germany. Actually, I am German, but I moved to beautiful Switzerland when I started at Avaloq.
And today we're going to talk about Agile HR and especially how you've taken that into a full operating model in your HR team. So first of all, I'm going to poll people online. So I'm going to open a poll, launch that. And while you're answering that poll, we're going to talk about the agenda for a while. So this is the agenda. Avaloq's HR team went through a full transformation. I think it was a year ago you started, or a little bit over, where you started looking at, okay, the organization is going Agile. They are putting in Agile operating models, and we need to start thinking about how to serve this organization in a better way. So Avaloq HR has fully transformed how they work, and we're going to hear about that today. First of all, we're going to have a discussion with Antonie, so you're going to hear firsthand what that looks like and how they are working. Then we have a short session for Q&As. Then we're going to wrap up with the insights. So first of all, I just want to get you quickly introduced to Agile HR Operating Model. What does that mean? Well, there isn't one model or a right answer that's the first thing that we want to say. The business operations are changing currently. They are moving towards a more adaptive, networked, digital way of working. And the coronavirus has pushed many of our organizations to adapt those agile ways of working transparently, working from home, validating and navigating the work with transparent backlogs and working and evolving that as we go. In HR, we can see several different operating models take place currently where they are looking for a more adaptive, more quicker way to deliver value to the organizations, and also getting rid of those HR silos that we see quite a lot of. These are just 2 examples. We've got several of them that we train and talk about. One example that we can see is the squad model. So HR teams actually going into a pool of HR professionals. There are no longer the HR silos, say, of reward, talent, performance, etc., but they all work in a pool. The people who work with developing organizational processes, practices, or the organization are in a pool. And then you agree on which initiatives are we going to work on. Then you gather a cross-functional HR team, or even add business people or other support functions on those teams to deliver those initiatives. That is the squad model that we can see happening. We also see in smaller teams, we see teams starting to adopt the Kanban model or the Kanban way of working, which means that they are following up everything they do on a Kanban board with the backlog to do, doing and done, limiting their work in progress and following the flow of work throughout their whole team. These are just two examples of Agile HR operating models. And what we're going to hear today is another example that Avaloq has adopted. All right, so let's look at the poll. What is the level of Agile maturity within your existing organization? Oh, many people say the company is scaling agility across several teams. That's the actual majority of you. Fantastic to have you on board. Some people are just starting, they've been parts of the organization, and then we have low or non-existent in about a third of the organizations. And we've also got people who this doesn't apply to. So we've only got 2 people said the Agile operating model is the norm. So that is probably companies where they started Agile in the first place. Then we have, what is your existing HR operating model? So many people are saying you're in a functional model with specialist functions, or the Avaloq model with the centers of excellence, shared services, and then we got the business partners there. We have some people who have the Agile HR model. Then we also have the lovely small company HRs with a team doing everything. So as you can see, looking at your context, we can't say, here's an Agile HR operating model, take this and copy paste this. It doesn't work. So you have to understand Agile HR is very contextual, and you need to be able to modify and tailor that into your context, your industry, your strategic situation, and your team size. So what we hear today from Antonie is something that you might find interesting, but doesn't really apply to your organization. You can still learn about that because that can be applied in another organization later on. So let's keep an open mind when we hear about the case, and think about what we possibly can pick up and maybe apply or try in our organizations, or then just say, this doesn't work in our organizations, but nice to learn about that. Okay, Antonie, I will give you the word to share about your story. The stage is yours. Lovely to have you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rina. I think you can already jump to the next slide. So I'd like to give you, or to start and give you an introduction of where we started and why we actually saw the need to change. And as you all know, today's organizations find themselves in a very complex and dynamic environment, and management is becoming ever more challenging, not least accelerated by the digital transformation. And the question is now how these developments are changing the way we live and especially work. And to respond to this challenge and adapt to the new environment, also Avaloq saw the need to transform its business and radically change the actually existing rigid structures and procedures, and find ways to shape this fundamental structural change of work we're facing that also entails completely new forms of employment, which is a major topic for HR teams and organizations. And yeah, our CHRO, Christina Hübschen, she's a very visionary person. She's always having her finger on the pulse. She's full of ideas and inspirations, and always looking for trends on the external market. And already it was back in 2016, she introduced Frédéric Laloux's book, Reinventing Organizations, to Avaloq's HR teams. And this, in combination with a cross-organizational culture analysis in 2015, were actually the main events that triggered everything that followed in our HR organization until today, with, of course, a major focus on people processes. Christina Hübschen, she just wanted to shape this change proactively rather than being changed or being forced to change by others. And interestingly, more or less at the same time, our core business also started to transform their organization into an agile one. And this means that there was not only this external pressure to change something kicking in, but quite some motion and change internally within the company as well. So she knew we needed to change something in our way of working, or also in our operational model, but she didn't know where to start or what to do or even how to change. So she decided to send the whole HR organization on an upskilling journey end of 2018. And we all were trained in agile design thinking as well as holacracy. For those of you who don't know holacracy, it's a method of decentralized management and organizational governance in which authority and decision-making are distributed throughout a system of self-organizing teams rather than being vested in a management hierarchy. But this is not so important for the moment. It's just on a side note. Yeah, and actually that was our journey so far, and that's how we started, resulting in our current HR operating model that was introduced beginning of this year.
So the next thing is that we're going to start having a short interview. Sorry, I got it wrong. I got the timing wrong. I realized that it was actually 2018 when you started with this. So I said 2019. What a lovely picture. It says that you've been on this journey for a longer time, right? And what I really love about what you said there is that somebody who's visionary realizes that we need to start changing, but doesn't know exactly where to go. It's a really kind of, let's start where we are, let's start learning and bringing you guys on board. So bringing the whole HR team on board with changing that organization. Antonie, can we talk about what this really looks like in practice? For example, how are you collaborating across the HR teams, etc.? We have a picture about that. So let's talk quickly or a short time about that as well as an interview. And I'm going to ask you some questions and look into the details a bit with you. But let's start with the picture. Here is your HR organization. Would you like to walk us through a little bit how this works and what this means, quite in practice?
Yeah, exactly. As I just explained at the beginning of 2020, it was not only the way that HR applied its work was changed, it was also that the whole HR team was reorganized in order to implement the methodologies and new skills that were acquired in 2018 and 2019 with a major focus on human-centric innovation methodologies. And as the Agile methodology gradually gained ground across the organization, HR set up a structure that favors the Agile way of working and at the same time enables some of the principles where possible. So what we did, and you can also see it on the slide, we put the people experience in the middle of our HR organization as the centerpiece and also as the connection between all HR areas, or you can also call it service lines on the right side, and the business departments or the clients on the left side. And this people experience interface ensures that the user's perspective is reflected in everything we do and we provide to our clients. And we also committed ourselves to run all new processes, tools, and ideas through a design thinking workshop. Now I quickly want to explain to you what people experience is or what it means to us. So you can also call it user experience or candidate experience or even employee experience. It's more about the X, and this is there to put the whole thing around the employees. We call it people experience because we decided we are also in touch with not only with internal stakeholders, but also with externals. And therefore we were looking for a broader term than employee. And for us, people experience is the sum of all moments, impressions, experiences, and interactions that employees have with HR and that influence them emotionally. And in the end, it's about shaping the emotional moments and creating moments that matter throughout the Avaloq journey of our people. These are the moments that are crucial and that lasts. For example, it starts with the job interview, the onboarding process, daily to-dos and routines to the final exit interviews. And and as you can see, our operating model is divided into two sides and connected through this people experience interface. The client side on the left, this focuses on the traditional HR management function as per Avaloq region and business division, whereas the service lines on the right are managing the different HR products. Our HR business partners are currently not so much affected from the Agile setup, whereas the service line heads act like the so-called product owners, and they are responsible for their area's product backlog. Meaning I'm the team lead for L&D and I'm a product owner too. So the product owners of the service lines are requested to make sure that design thinking methods are applied regularly and also that we ensure to work in an agile kind of way, whenever it makes sense. And all our HR service lines use their own Scrum board, and the particular backlogs are prioritized based on the value effort matrix, following the principle that the value for the customer can actually be increased while the effort remains manageable. This is a very helpful and also powerful tool for us in decision making and identifying what is important or risky and where to direct the efforts to. The sprint cycles may vary per service line or even per product backlog item, and that's how we keep the whole thing kind of flexible and adjusted to, according to our very specific needs. Apart from that, the Agile methodology shall also be applied in projects to break them down into more manageable tasks that are tackled in short iterations or sprints and release benefits throughout the process rather than only at the end. Here, the so-called solution drivers are joining the game. This is the vertical layer in gray, and these are the former HR project managers, and they are supposed to act in the role of the Scrum Master now. Where it makes sense, Scrum teams are formed, especially in HR projects, and the definition of new HR services or the implementation of tools. And usually the Scrum team is built of team members from HR areas, relevant stakeholders from the business, or even externals, of course, always depending on the project or initiative. And the whole right side, meaning the service lines and the solution drivers together form our HR People Experience Squad, which is actually led by our head of people experience. And in this forum, we have bi-weekly meetings where each product owner gives an update on current initiatives, and also ideas are presented and discussed. And here we also share our experiences from applying design thinking methods in workshops with the business. And in the end, every service line has time boxed 5 minutes to inform on updates, and the remaining 30 minutes are just used for discussion and brainstorming on relevant topics.
Fantastic. Awesome description. Thank you very much for being that clear and describing this whole picture in a very clear sense. Sounds like you, the left-hand side can continue working close to the clients even as they have before, but they are supported now by an Agile People Experience Squad and also those projects leading into improving the people experience through the whole life cycle. So can I ask you a couple of questions about this? There are a couple of things that are interesting. Mm-hmm. So when you are in a stage where, for example, a project, one of the solution drivers, you've set up a Scrum team for a project which is cross-functional, and they need to release something to the organization. Are you releasing everything at once to all of these left-hand side businesses, or are you trying to release first to bits and pieces or to some parts and then add on more releases? How does releasing work in this organization?
I mean, it really depends, but usually we start running pilots and test it with a certain organization, usually the one business division that is affected most kind of initiative, and then we test it with them and we incorporate their feedback, and afterwards we roll it out to the whole organization. That's how we usually do it, just to ensure that we have considered everything and every user requirements.
I like that. I like when you said the business unit that is affected the most, because that's the most important part where you need that feedback from, so you can iterate if there's something wrong with the solution, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's another question that I have. So you are basically running 2 week sprints or 2 weeks iterations throughout the service lines, or 2 weeks, you check in between 2 weeks, what's going on?
We're checking in exactly. The iterations really depend. We don't have fixed times or sprint cycles for the iterations on the single product backlog items or initiatives. Because here we identified the need for some flexibility. So this bi-weekly meeting with the HR People Experience Squad is really there to check in and to also share learnings.
Fantastic. So if I'm thinking about this on a kind of strategic level, How frequent is the portfolio level prioritization where you prioritize across the whole people experience? Is that quarterly? Is that done by monthly? What is the frequency there where you sit together with the leadership team and, or gathering all that feedback and data you have to make decisions about which initiatives should we run during the next X amount of time, or what should happen within these service lines to be of the most value for the business?
Yeah, well, here we are currently experiencing some learnings, and I cannot give you a final answer, but we try to put also in this people experience everything through this value effort matrix, and this is how we try to prioritize what we need to focus on. But I would also say we target to have this reprioritization quarterly.
Quarterly, okay, good, yeah.
So hand in hand with our team target setting tool.
These business lines, if they are working in an agile way, they might have totally different cadences. So say there's people who are doing coding and software development, they might have a cadence of a week, and they might have a portfolio cadence of a month. Whereas you might have some compliance people on the client side who have a cadence of a quarter or in half a year. So they might have a totally different pulse on that business side as well, which is interesting, how to then combine the people experience portfolio with the business pulse, so to say.
Yeah, of course, we have a yearly HR calendar and we try to follow, but we realize that we need to be flexible.
So the next thing that we prepared a little bit, I think it's a fantastic thing and so amazing what you said about you are incorporating design thinking in everything you do. So it would be lovely to hear a little bit more about that. And we also have a picture that helps us talk through that. So let's put up that next. Can you share a little bit what this means in practice, and maybe also look into a specific example?
Yes, of course. So here you can see our HR design thinking cycle, and I will later go into more detail. Here, I would like to first share an example from my learning and development area, because I think this helps you also to understand how we operate. So one of the first things we did in design thinking in L&D beginning of the year was to apply two simple methods to put ourselves in the users, or better, let's say in the learner's shoes. So first of all, we created L&D personas to deepen our understanding of our learners' needs, behaviors, and goals. And here we identified 5 general characters, which are the leader, the line manager, the successor, the employee, and the young talent. And these 5 general characters are representative of the company's main learner profiles in terms of common learning needs, regardless of their expertise or their job specification. And the second thing we did was, with these personas in mind, we started writing user stories to identify core requirements that are common to all Avaloq learners. And in the end, we came up with about 70 user stories in total. And again, we applied the value effort matrix and labeled them accordingly. And this also helped us to identify the area to focus on. And now that we knew where we needed to focus on, we conducted a focus group session with 10 learners, meaning 2 representatives of each persona group, to validate our findings. And together we created the user needs statements. And in this session with the learners, the 10 learners, we identified 3 key user needs. Firstly, this was that they want to have one single point of entry for all learning opportunities available. And secondly, they wanted to have an overview on all the learning opportunities available, with details on the teaching method, on the content, cost, etc. Now, this might sound a bit basic to you, but the background for L&D at Avaloq is that we have a quite L&D landscape that is quite spread across the organization. So at the moment we don't have this, but we are working to really realize their wishes. And the last key user need we identified in this session was that they want to be made aware of all the activities in the field of learning and development. So for this, these 3 key user need statements, For us, this meant to translate it into product backlog items. So the first one was to create a learning hub with navigation, and interdependent of this was to show what's in the learning repository. And lastly, we needed to have a great communication strategy in place. So we started off with this learning navigation and came up with the first prototype, which was tested with our colleagues. We identified the user need statements with, and again, their input was incorporated into the prototype. And finally, the learning navigation will be implemented, hopefully by end of September. So this whole process took us about 6 to 8 weeks, but I can tell you it's very satisfying to know that the outcome is really useful to our Avaloq learner and tailored to their very specific needs.
So this means that you started writing those personas, and did you have other people than HR people on when you started doing the persona work, or was that done with the L&D people?
Actually, this was done in our cross-functional L&D team. So almost in every business division, we have L&D people. Here, we also try to gradually remove the silos, and we started to collaborate and co-create here and working on these personas.
And when you did, was it difficult to, because sometimes when we do persona work with customers or organizations, the people tend to get too many personas. So how did you kind of limit that to the personas that you mentioned? Was it difficult, or did it come naturally to say, okay, these are the main ones?
Actually, it was not so difficult. Quite quickly, we came up with those 5 general characters. Somehow it was clear to us.
Somehow it sounds like you in an L&D environment and in those businesses have the same kind of professionals, and you kind of know who they are and could identify the personas there. I also think it's very interesting, and I like how you wrote those user stories and got 70 out of them, started prioritizing those and found the most important ones, which actually, as you said, sounded quite basic. But coming from the landscape that you had, they are probably the most valuable ones. Somehow getting that basic in place, how valuable that is for the people. When you now move forward with developing for instance, the learning portal, where people can log in and see everything, how do you start validating with these personas? Say that you're delivering something in the end of September, which was, can you say that again? What was that?
Yeah, so the learning navigation.
The learning navigation.
The one single point of entry, the learning hub. That
exactly.
was the first key user need.
The first key user need will be delivered by the end of September. How have you validated or tested that it works? With who have you done that? Have you done that throughout all those personas?
Yeah, exactly. So we validated our findings from the user stories with this focus group of 10 learners, so 2 representatives of each persona group. Together with this group, we tested the learning navigation prototype again. So first of all, we came up with a prototype internally, and then we showed it to this focus group. They were already familiar with the topic, so they gave us feedback to this prototype.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, so that was what I thought about. You got the input from these people and the personas basically, and then you checked in before you start implementing or adopting that across the organization.
Yes, and also across the design thinking cycle, we don't change the people we work with from the business. Otherwise, this would mean that we each time need to onboard them again. So when we are working on a product backlog item, we tend to work with the same group of people.
Awesome. If we go to kind of take a step back from design thinking, and I'm just looking at time because time just flies, I'd love to go to a question regarding what are your recommendations. So if you think about a HR team that wants to start building a new operating model, you've gone now from 2018 to the point where you have a new operating model. Let's put that up. So you've got this new operating model. what are your recommendations? How do you start succeeding? Because you guys are now doing it, and you've been gone through a learning journey and a development journey, a continuous improvement journey. So tell us what you would recommend.
Yes, I mean, I can only share my experiences, and of course I will share the things that worked for us. And first of all, I think it's very important to make sure to upskill the complete HR team by doing different trainings in whatever topic. So we've selected the new work topic so that the whole team has kind of a base of theoretic knowledge. They can share ideas and experiences about, as mentioned in the beginning, for us this was agile and design thinking and also holacracy, but the holacracy training we did not roll out across the whole HR organization, as with the one workshop we had in the headquarters, we felt or we sensed that this framework might be too much for our HR people, so we feared to overwhelm them. And it was also that by that time, when the training series happened, we still didn't know if this was the right thing to do or not, and in which direction it will lead us in general. But yeah.
So first of all, you upskill people, and then you discuss what can we actually use from what we've learned. Is there anything else that you might to recommend to people who want to, or to HR teams who want to start looking into new operating models?
Yeah, I mean, after this upskilling journey, we started to work with just different things. We tried out small things from those methodologies, like working with a Kanban board or inviting to HR internal design thinking sessions just to get familiar with it. We also started sending email newsletters to the whole HR team, informing them on current design thinking initiatives ongoing, or providing them with small chunks of knowledge around the whole new work topic, just to make sure that it stays in mind of our HR colleagues. What was also great, that we had a team of 4 dedicated people working on the new work topic and for further developing it. And in the end, this team realized that the new methodologies can only be implemented and will only be applied if they're anchored in an operating model. And in the end, when it's not reflected in the operating model, people are not taking seriously enough. And it was also the fact that in the 1 year between our upskilling journey and the implementation of the operating model, we felt a huge uncertainty amongst the whole HR team. And to introduce this operating model had everyone to kind of tune in to find the layer or part they belong to without fearing that their jobs might change in any way. So those were the things that were quite helpful. We also tried to allow our people some space and time to get back to their normal working lives again, because we just wanted to avoid to overwhelm them.
Sounds like you have made the transition into this model quite safe, so that people have the opportunity to, first of all, learn, second of all, think about what can really be applied here, so it's not pushed or imposed on people. Then you've made it possible to start with some initiatives and get knowledge about those. But then what I'm also hearing is that it wasn't just bottoms up change. It was also a change that was decided that, okay, we need structure in place to actually go here, which meant that you were starting to put in that operating model and changing the teams, the roles, the responsibilities around the HR team. So let's start looking into the chat box. So first of all, I don't believe that there is anything called change resistance. I think that people are willing to change. We are inherently changing organisms if it makes sense to us. So, but let's look at what kind of change resistance, or what kind of, what we talk about, resistance or difficulties did you see when you started moving this way? Can you mention a couple of ones? Of course, without names or pointing out to anybody, but can you mention something, Antonie?
We also noticed that there are some detractors, people who are criticizing a lot, but not always openly, but also behind the backs, and try to influence others with their behavior. But you kind of need to really, if you need to focus on what you want to achieve. And another challenge that we faced was that as a global company, you need to be aware of the fact that certain cultures might find it difficult to operate in a more self-organizing way, and also involving users to ask for their opinions. And some people might even be afraid of losing power and status, or even their expert role. So this means that they can't dictate what's to be done anymore. And it actually happened to us as well, that one team lead, she left because she didn't feel comfortable with this self-organizing agile transformation we went through.
And I actually think that is important. So the agile mindset and the values is not to force anybody to be agile. The agile mindset includes that. So some people say agile is about full self-organization and everybody needs to be able to make their own decisions. And what if you have people who say, I want to have a job where I'm told what to do. I want to have a job where I follow the processes and I'll do a good job with that. I don't want to self-organize. Then the agile mindset is, okay, let's help you do a good job in a position where you can be yourself and work as you want to. And if that is in this organization, then great. But sometimes it's outside of the organization if you really need to make decisions about the Agile HR operating model. So I think it's a very important way, or very important insight that you just said. Some people is not fit for Agile and can't impose it on them either. Most are when they learn this way of working. Most people really enjoy that, because it's team-based. You make those decisions real time and you can see that value and you can validate that you're going in the right direction. Let's take another question. Awesome questions. What have been the big discoveries you found by working with focus groups of employees?
The biggest discovery is that you are not your user, I think. We always think that we know what they want, or actually we thought that we knew what our my learners or our people want, but it's not. They always have a different perspective on how things should be done or how tools should work. And this is, I think, one of the most important discoveries. And it's also great to see that with this, with running our initiatives in a design thinking way, we managed to create kind of a pull effect. Nowadays, business is super interested in what we're doing, and they want to co-create and shape our services and processes with us. And I think it's also important that we, as HR, are keeping in mind that we're talking about services or products that not only affect people's working, but also their private lives. And I would say through this transformation, we are much closer to our people than we've ever been before.
That is so important. And I think what you just said is kind of funny as well, because quite a lot of HR people think, I've been doing this job for 20 years and I know exactly what my people need. I just want to say I've been in that situation myself, thinking that I know, but I've lost that from my thinking now. What I just like to say is that, okay, create a hypothesis. Say to yourself, okay, I believe X will happen when I show this to the people. Then you go and try and validate that and see that X usually doesn't happen, but the people will have totally different needs and they will tell you what they need as well. So I think it's a lovely way of using design thinking to just put your assumptions on the side and start approaching the challenges as a scientist to say, we believe that this is the right solution, but let's see, test and see. There is an interesting question regarding the business HR, the operational HR side. How were they brought along on the journey and how did that role change, or did it?
So as I said, our business partners were also part of that upskilling journey. So they also learned about Agile and design thinking and also about holacracy partially. And they are nowadays part of some design thinking workshops, and of course they sometimes are the contact point between us service lines and the clients. So when we are looking for people who participate in our design thinking workshops, we often approach our business partners and ask them Do you have a proposal? And of course, they also need to understand the way we are working in the service lines, because in the end, it's them who are, they are also impacted by the services we build and we create. So yeah, they need to be aware of what we are doing, and they also need to understand the topic. That's why we continuously also are in exchange with them and made sure that they have this basic knowledge about design thinking and agile.
One thing that is what I quite often hear from business HR is that they're just kind of scratching their heads that the HR centers of excellence and centers of whatever they are called, the corporate side of the company is just pushing things onto us that my business doesn't want and my business doesn't need or doesn't make sense for our business. So I'm thinking that moving this way where you have been moving, getting them to participate, listening to the business, seeing where you can adopt a one-size-fits-all model or where you need to tailor, I think that the business partners in your organization might be a bit happier than many of the other business partners in the global organizations. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, I've never asked this question, but it's definitely that you need to consider this part that our core business also operates in an agile organization. So they definitely need to understand what happens in an agile organization. So yeah, they kind of have both perspectives, our clients agile operating model and our HR agile operating model.
One thing that I had on my mind is that sometimes when HR people learn about Agile HR or design thinking, they kind of start overdoing that. And they are asking the business to participate in tens of workshops where they continuously kind of use their time, half a day or a day, for design thinking. So how can we, in your opinion, use the business's time wisely when we're doing design thinking? Have you got any kind of tips or tricks or guidelines for that?
What we did is, if you go quickly back to the design thinking cycle, you can see that in the prototyping stage, it's only HR that is mentioned. So in the beginning, when we started when we implemented the design thinking methodology, we also prototyped with our colleagues from the business. But we learned, and the feedback was that it's way too time consuming to them, and sometimes, yeah, they're not so much into the topic that they can come up with a prototype, and that's why we took that feedback and adjusted the design thinking cycle according to our needs. So nowadays we come up first with a prototype, which is, by the way, or which can be very time consuming, and then we present it to the business and get feedback on that prototype. So yeah, I think you just need to keep it flexible and adjust it according to our very specific needs.
Love it. I love how you picked up that, and I didn't realize from the picture that you actually had changed this. So great answer. How do you help teams get to productive decision making inside a holacracy, or otherwise prevent consensus-driven decisions stalling the pace of innovation? But you are not, if I understand you correctly, you did not implement or adopt holacracy. You learned about that, but it's not adopted.
Exactly, it's not adopted. We decided not to adopt it because our people didn't like it, to be honest. And I think our CHRO, she's targeting to gradually approach self-organization, but at the moment we are not there. And holacracy could be one option, but I think there are many others as well. So yeah, currently.
Yeah, I'm not trained in holacracy either. I think what I've learned about this. Of course, I've been looking into it. What I learned about is it's a pretty Sounds like a pretty heavy model for decision making as well, but when it starts working, I think the self-organized circles will get things done and will get decisions made. Some companies, there is a lovely case example from actually the Finnish National Library, Oodi, where they have self-organization in place where the people, the librarians, can make decisions together, and they've got circles to take different decisions to, and they are really quick at making decisions. So this can be happening, but you need quite a lot of support, you need some structures in place, and you need to start evolving that together with the people. We are at time, so we are gonna wrap up the call. A super big thank you, Antonie, for being on the call and sharing what you've done. I think where you are at and the path you've been walking is amazing. You are among, the pioneers of Agile HR teams for sure. And it will be lovely to hear how you take steps forward. Anything that you have personally, if I can kind of come to you personally, what is the personal journey that you've gone through, and what is the most important thing there, starting from 2018 or where you started the journey?
I mean, I first heard about Agile and self-organizing team during my master studies in 2015, and then I joined Avaloq, and Agile was an omnipresent word, and but sometimes it felt more like a buzzword that was floating around. And actually, in the end, was the Agile HR practitioner training that helped me to understand how to apply Agile in a different organizational context. And when I came back from the training, I was pretty surprised how easily it was then for me to implement this
awesome.
at my workplace, and yeah, I'm also on a journey, and I continuously learn, and I'm grateful to be part of this HR team at Avaloq.
I am so proud of you. I'm so proud to see what you've been doing. It's lovely. So everybody, thank you very much to be online. If you are interested in getting into the community, if you want to share your cases, if you want to jump on a program to learn about this, get in touch with us. Thank you for your time. Hopefully this was valuable for you as it was for us as well. Thank you, Antonie, once more, and have a lovely, lovely evening or day wherever you are.